What's up, everybody? It's Friday, and it's time for Tower Talk. January 29th, 2021. This week at Bungie, it was announced that Season of the Redacted trailer goes live on February 2nd. And I don't know about y'all, but I am really looking forward to seeing what the next theme is, you know? I don't know where we're going to go from here. I don't know where the story's going to take us, and I'm always excited to find out, what's the next piece of the story that we're going to tell. So mark your calendars, everybody. February 2nd is when that trailer is going to come out. We also found out about something new called seasonal challenges, and this is one of the things that I'm really excited about. Basically, what they're saying is they have been looking at the problems of bounty fatigue and fear of missing out, as well as, what is a season and how does a player engage with it when they log in every day. So this is designed to improve that experience. And these were the goals they had in mind for that. They wanted to guide new, returning, and veteran players for what to do every day or every week. They want to help guide the player through the seasonal content week over week, to encourage players to engage with the different complexities and nuances of the seasonal activities and rituals, and reduce the penalties on XP and Bright Dust if you miss a given week, right? And that last part is the most important part of that. So to solve those goals, they're introducing a new pursuit type for players called Seasonal Challenges. They will have their own page, and they'll be accessed through the quest log or the season pass, and are separated by week. And if you go and have a look at the TWAB here, there's a great picture of, what that screen is going to look like. And if you were around for Halo Reach, we had those challenges, daily and weekly challenges. And I remember I really loved that because, I have my checklist of things to do, like what are my chores? But a lot of times, especially if you are a person who really eats through content, and I know I can be, you log in and you're like, what should I do today? Like, I don't know what I want to do today. I just have that feeling that I want to play Destiny. What should I do? And so I always really like this system. And I want to call out to a lot of people mocked this, not because they didn't like it, but they're like, oh, Destiny's adding what Fortnite and all these other games already have. Like I said, Bungie did this back in Halo Reach, before Fortnite was a twinkle in anybody's eye. So I, for one, am glad. I think that these systems are needed just for player engagement. And I think a lot of players are like me, where we just want to log on and have some direction. We want to play, but we don't know what to do, so we twiddle our thumbs and then we log off, right? This will help with that a lot, and I'm really looking forward to it. I like going in and checking off that list and getting my rewards, right? So that's really cool. They give a breakdown of how the feature works. So every week, for the first 10 weeks of a season, between 3 and 10 new challenges appear automatically for players. Some of the challenges deal with the seasonal content. Others will ask you to complete strikes, Gambit, Crucible, or they'll focus on a non-activity focused Destiny ritual, something like upping your power level, unlocking mods on your seasonal artifact, or improving weapons and armor. I really like this sort of scope of what will be included. These challenges can only be completed once per account. I actually like that because I can spend time with whatever character I want and not feel like there's a penalty, which is nice. Once they become available, these challenges can be completed at any time before the end of the season and do not need to be started or picked up from a vendor, which is also awesome. You can jump in and get going, and you don't have to fly anywhere to go pick it up or twiddle with your app to go pick it up. That's awesome. As an example, if a player doesn't play for weeks 2 through 4, they can return on week 5 and have all of those challenges waiting for them. Great decision. Completing each challenge awards XP, contributing to your season pass ranks. Love it. Other rewards could be Bright Dust. Awesome. Seasonal currency. Also awesome. Or other interesting items. And I like that part because that last part leaves so many possibilities for special things that they could put in there for you to pick up. It's good motivation. Like, this is the kind of carrot on the stick sort of base leveling up system that I really enjoy. So this is great. In moving away from weekly bounties, which were restricted to broad objectives tied to ritual activities, we have taken more leeway with creating some interesting or more difficult challenges. These may be things you're already doing, or things that test your ability. Some examples include defeating primeval envoys in Gambit, defeating enemies in Nightfall the Ordeal with seasonal weapons, gaining Infamy or Valor ranks, acquiring the ritual weapon and its cosmetic ornaments, winning rounds in Trials of Osiris, completing a Grandmaster Nightfall. Again, I really like the scope of these more difficult challenges, and I'm sure that there'll be ones that are even more difficult than that. But I really, really like what they're looking at here for what is a challenge. Because that's one thing I think, if we look back at Halo Reach again, I think sometimes they got stuck. Because, you know, you'd have something really hard like complete a level on Legendary, but it was still just that, like complete a level on Legendary. And then you'd have, you know, kill 100 grunts, kill 40 elites, you know, whatever it was. And it always stayed sort of what I would call more basic, right? This has more of a breadth to it. And of course, it's a game that has a lot more of a breadth and depth to it than something like Halo did at the time. So I like that they went beyond just basic. They go on to say that not all the challenges will require like that level of accomplishment, but the harder or longer challenges, the more experience it'll reward. So I like that too, because they're gonna pay me for my time, is what we're talking about here. Challenges that focus on the seasonal activity and ritual mostly need the season pass to complete, but most of the ritual-focused challenges can be completed without the season pass. Very important point for people that do not have that. Overall, roughly 60% of the seasonal challenges do not require the season pass. That's fair. Excellent news. Now, also, of course, what this means is that the weekly bounties are going to be removed from the 3 ritual vendors. That's Zavala, Shaxx, and the Drifter. From Banshee 44, and from whoever the seasonal vendor is. So, in this case, if we're looking at the current season, Crow would not have his weekly bounties. Right, whoever that person is, there won't be weekly bounties anymore. The 3 ritual vendors will still have daily bounties, which reward XP, and they will still have repeatable bounties for those of you who want to pursue the additional XP and Bright Dust. So, taking a minute here, that means that if you've been bounty stacking, like I have, don't keep the weekly ones, because they're going to be eliminated. They're not going to exist anymore. So don't stack those. The dailies and repeatables are fine. And those dailies and repeatables are still going to exist at those vendors. Zavala, Shaxx, Drifter, Banshee, seasonal vendor, for additional XP and Bright Dust. Okay. So they're just going to be like back burner and supplementary now to the challenge system, which that's really in line with what they've already talked about. They wanted bounties to be a supplemental thing, not the overarching means of progressing. So this is great. This all sounds great. And then they say, lastly, most of the challenges disappear after the season they were introduced, and anything that isn't claimed will be lost. So, really important point here. If you completed a bunch of stuff and you didn't go claim your rewards yet, you will need to claim them before the end of the season. There won't be a retroactive claiming like we have with the reward track for the previous season, right? We won't add any new challenges after week 10. The idea being that that will give everyone a few weeks to clean up challenges that they didn't finish that they want to. Okay. Any challenge that rewards unique or seasonal items, so currencies, lore books, seasonal weapons, etc., can be completed as long as the seasonal activity is in the game. But you need to note this next part, which is that XP that would be awarded for completing that challenge will only be available during the season it was introduced. And that's probably to keep us from stacking any of those. I understand. The next section they talk about is Bright Dust, and I didn't expect this comprehensive of an overhaul, and I mean, from where I sit, this all sounds like really, 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 really good news. So, let's see. As a refresher, we wanted to change the way you earn Bright Dust and move more towards account-specific paths so that people with only one character get more Bright Dust, right? In Season 13, we'll be continuing to move toward these goals by adding Bright Dust onto season challenges. Okay, so this is the next part of how season challenges are going to work, is how they're going to award you Bright Dust. Since you no longer have to purchase weekly ritual bounties, each of the Strike, Crucible, and Gambit seasonal challenges will award between 75 and 300 Bright Dust. I like the sound of that. We are also introducing an end-of-season Bright Dust bonus. If you complete nearly all of the season challenges, we are awarding a single 4,000 Bright Dust pile. Epic. What I'm wondering is, like, what percentage? How many of the total does that require? But I like the incentive. Why should I push through these challenges? Because there's a big old pile of Bright Dust waiting for you. That's why. Additionally, each ritual vendor challenge, the complete 8 bounties one, awards 120 Bright Dust for each character who completes it each week. This I find extremely attractive because I can tell you right now, I always stop doing those when I'm done leveling. Straight up. Even the Zavala ones for strikes. I'm just like, why should I do this? Right? Why should I do this? What's the point? Now, they're saying, if you do this, here's 120 Bright Dust. So I'm all for that. And then they say, because this prompted the removal of weekly bounties, the only seasonal challenges that will be awarding Bright Dust are the ones that both Season Pass owners and free players can complete. I like that. Again, it's fair. They go on to give a breakdown of how much Bright Dust you can expect to earn over the course of Season 13. So here we go. Seasonal challenges Bright Dust for all players. So free to play, seasonal, and both. Okay? Free seasonal activities, 6,000 Bright Dust. Seasonal extra, 4,000. If you're doing the math, that's 10,000 right there. A total of 10,000 Bright Dust from that category, so let's remember that 10,000. Season Pass Bright Dust. The free track is 7,500. The paid path is 3,000. The total is 10,500. So that is a total of 20,500 Bright Dust. But wait, there's more. Weekly Ritual Vendor Challenge Bright Dust, available to all players. 120 Bright Dust per ritual vendor, per character, per week. 14,040 total if you complete all required weekly challenges over the course of Season 13. So that is a potential total of, hold on, put on our math hats, 10, 20, 34, 34,540 Bright Dust will be available to you over the course of a season if you have the Season Pass. And if you don't, it's what? It would still be 24,040 if you don't have the Season Pass, which is a lot. That's a lot. That is not bad. And I want to share too, a lot of people were very upset about the most recent change to Bright Dust because it hurt people with 3 characters. And I just have to disagree because my Bright Dust spending habits haven't really changed, nor have my silver habits. And while it would have been hard to get everything, I still got everything I wanted, just like I always do. And I'm sitting on something like 40,000 Bright Dust, where typically at this point I would be sitting on 27 or 31,000 maybe. So the changes that they made actually did work. And I didn't have to do as much extra work across 3 characters to get to that point. So I just wanted to share that. I have more Bright Dust than I've ever had. And now I'm going to be like Scrooge McDuck in his money bin swimming in Bright Dust with the changes that are coming. Seems like. So, anyway, they said they still plan to offer weekly and repeatable Bright Dust bounties for seasonal events, so I assume they're talking about, like, Festival of the Lost, The Dawning, etc. So you can earn a bit more when you want to. And as a final note, please be sure to claim all seasonal challenges that award Bright Dust prior to the end of a season. Once the season ends, associated challenges and their Bright Dust rewards will expire and can no longer be claimed. So it seems to me like the smart bet, because I know there are some exceptions to this, the smart bet is to make sure you claim your challenges right away. Just make sure you claim them, because then you don't have to worry about it. And most things will expire and not be claimable after a season's over. So just claim it all and don't take a chance. Then the next section is the upcoming sandbox update. And I'm gonna paraphrase here and just call out the important stuff. Of course, with crossplay coming, a logical change to the recoil stat is coming. Right now, several weapon archetypes have their recoil reduced by around 40% when using mouse and keyboard. The result of this is that players on mouse and keyboard basically can ignore the stability stat. And that creates a discrepancy in weapon performance between controllers and mouse and keyboard. And, like, it would never matter until we're all going to be playing together, right? So, the following archetypes are having their mouse and keyboard recoil adjusted closer to controller. The difference will be going from about 40% to about 20%. That's auto rifles, scout rifles, pulse rifles, submachine gun, hand cannon, and machine gun. In the case of the pulse, submachine, and machine gun, they're also going to have sort of a counter buff. In some cases, the weapons will have less recoil across both controller and mouse and keyboard input compared to what's in the game today. So it's... One of my friends was sort of like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think that the language is adequate to describe what they're really talking about. But it's like, mouse and keyboard is kind of getting nerfed because you already have an advantage when you're using a mouse, right? But then the base behavior of the archetypes themselves outside of that are getting some adjustments from what they are today. And sort of the way that those two things cross is going to make it where it should be. Okay, just think about it that way. So, first thing is that submachine guns are largely outclassed by auto rifles at medium range and sidearms at short range. And player feedback is often mentioning how hard they are to control. And this is true, because there's probably 3 SMGs, well, I take that back, about 5 that I've ever really loved, right? And the top 2 being the Recluse and the 7th Seraph SMG. And largely what it is about those is how their stability is so much better than most of the archetype as a whole, right? But even then, especially on controller, they can be difficult to control, just like the feedback has said, right? So one of the things they're going to do is change the camera movement by 24% on submachine guns. Curious what that's actually going to look like. But then when they tested pulse rifles with the mouse and keyboard changes, they had too much kick, so their camera movement's going to get adjusted 7%. And same thing with machine guns, a little too much kick on mouse and keyboard after the nerf, so their camera movement is getting touched by 9.5%. I'm curious just to see what things fire like. I think what it means for console players like me is that we're going to get a performance on the sticks that's a little closer to mouse and keyboard, which is nice. Because I know that's what I'm always looking for, is what stats and rolls do I get on a gun that makes it more like what you would experience on PC, right? The most stable possible. Like, just doesn't move, right, under fire with the recoil and stuff. So I'm curious about that. And so is Bungie, because they're like, we're gonna pay attention to how these changes play out when they go live, and they'll be revisiting the individual archetypes in a future update as needed, if needed. Okay, so that's what's going on there. So buffs. Rocket launchers are finally getting some love, which I don't really feel one way or the other about. It's just that I've always hated recently, like, if rocket launchers come up as a bounty, I don't want to do it because they're just not as effective as I would like, right? I usually skip over it, not because I don't like them, but because using them is not fun. The damage is just not what it should be. So Bungie agrees, and they want to push them to more of a burst damage roll, which I agree is the right one. Their damage is going to be increased by 30%. Now, before anyone panics, exotic rocket launchers are being adjusted individually. So how they're affected by this 30% damage change will vary. So, and I appreciate that, because obviously a blanket 30%, including the exotics, could create some serious problems. I'm looking at you, Eyes of Tomorrow. Yeah, so we have that damage buff, and then we've had the buff to reserves, but we still don't have 2 in the tube. Still waiting for that. Fusion rifle usage is low, and they feel like an unreliable choice in Crucible compared to shotguns. Agreed. The damage fall off start distance will be based on the range stat now. And the example they give is it's a 6% with 0 range and 16% with 100 range. So that's what your scale is. They're also going to change the camera movement from firing the fusion rifle by 9.5%. So that's another weapon that's getting that camera adjustment for the recoil and like perceived stability, which is nice. And now this last one is straight fire for me. This was the juice. And like in my head, I have been wanting this, but I just didn't ask for it because I thought, well, this is the way this weapon is. You know, this is the way it is. Breach grenade launcher usage is very low outside of Mountaintop. Yes, we know this. We believe part of the reason is that the loop of hold the trigger to arm, then release to detonate is challenging to execute, particularly since projectiles can bounce off targets if the trigger is held. That last part is what I don't like. I've never had a huge problem with the fuse system per se, but I didn't like that it would just bounce if I happened to not let go of the trigger. You know, if something's a little closer, I just happened to not let go of the trigger in time. That used to bug me. So, breach grenade launcher projectiles will now detonate on impact with a character, even if holding the trigger. Thank you! The entire PvE community, of which I am a part, is cheering right now and throwing a party. Because if I have to be honest, that was probably the thing I liked the most about the Mountaintop. Obviously, it had great damage, the straight line fire. I mean, you know, its aim assist was great. It's not great now. You can miss now, and the projectile speed isn't as great now, but it was that you shot it at something and it blew up when it hit it, right? The micro missile and not the fused grenade. So I'm going to be looking at grenade launchers now. I've actually really loved Truth Teller this whole time, but it has that same problem, that if the trigger happens to be held, your projectile bounces and you miss. So I'm excited about this to see how it plays out. Okay, now, on to the nerfs. The first one of which, I don't know if I care about it. The second one is hurting me a little, and I'll go into it. Sniper rifle usage has dropped in the Crucible, but Bungie says they've observed that it's hard to challenge someone with a sniper rifle. Even if you get the first shot on an enemy, they can often respond and win the fight. So they have increased ADS flinch to snipers when taking damage from other players. Now, I do have a bone to pick with this. Sniper rifle flinch when you're being shot at doesn't need to be adjusted. The fact that the flinch strangely drops right back onto someone's head is what the problem is. More randomization of the flinch direction and return is what needs to be adjusted. So that the reticle doesn't just drop back onto someone's head and then you're able to take them out anyway. Like, that's why people with snipers are able to respond and win the fight. The amount of flinch isn't the issue. It's how the flinch works. So, that's my 2 cents. Now the really, really bad news. Swords are extremely dominant in PvE. At this time, 65% of players are using swords for the majority of gameplay encounters in Destiny 2. While we are introducing a buff to rocket launchers to make them a bit more enticing, we feel that swords do too much damage compared to other options. Reduce sword damage by 15%. Now, for those of you that have been keeping track, that means that our friend Falling Guillotine will now suffer a 27% change in damage from when it was introduced. If you're keeping track. And that hurts a lot. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people, including myself, feel like the real problem is how much damage Lament does. And I know it's exotic, but why don't we tune Lament or even tune Lament and Falling Guillotine individually? I don't think that we need to throw all swords in the bin. I don't think that that's the issue. And this is the other problem that I have with basing this just on raw numbers of like who's using a sword. We're not really looking at how they're using a sword, I don't think. The reason that players are using swords in the majority of gameplay encounters is like, let's look at the raid. You are using your sword for ad clear so that you can run double shotties, or maybe you've got divinity and an auto rifle, so you've got a sword to help you clear. It's not being used on the boss. Carrying a sword is often not about melting higher health characters in the slightest. It's you carry it so you can free up the other 2 slots, right? This is also the same issue that we had really with snipers in the first place, which is that the encounters were designed so that what choice did you have but to sit back and snipe? We've also come into this era where what choice do you have but to get in with a sword? You see what I'm saying? They're meta DPS for a reason, the design of the encounters, and so we keep doing this thing where we force a certain solution on players, right? And then we just nerf the crap out of the class and don't change anything else. And I mean, you could say they're thinking, well, if we nerf swords, then they'll get in there with shotguns. But the stomp, right? Like, I can't get in there with something else. So now you're going to nerf the thing that I can get in there with. The other part of it is there is a risk reward that happens with swords because, you know, like when I do really hard stuff, like, I don't know, let's talk about solo Hawkmoon. You can't just get in there and use a sword. Now, if I could just run up to something and hack it up with the sword in that difficulty scenario, then I would say that there's a problem. But I mean, like, Grandmasters even would be another example. You can't go in there and get at them with a sword. So see, that's not the problem. We're not actually addressing the issue. Personally, Lament and even Falling Guillotine are what needs to be tuned, not swords as a class. So, you know, we'll see what happens, but it came up in conversation last night. What does this mean for the Riven cheese? And I don't want to hear a bunch of stuff about how we shouldn't be cheesing Riven anyway. Doesn't matter. It's beside the point, because you can. It's part of the game. You can damage her that way. And so my friend is like, is that even going to work? Because typically, I mean, you kind of only just make it. And what I was saying was, you'll probably need to make sure that you use Lucent Blade, right? Everybody's going to need Lucent Blade. You'll probably need to use the raid armor with Transcendent Blessing, right? And several stacks of it, right? You're going to need to use some stacks of it. And you will probably need someone using Divinity. I think probably the tractor cannon method is out. Someone will need Divinity, and you're not going to be able to do it with 4 or 5 people anymore. You're going to have to use 6 players. Because we're talking about 15% additional reduction, and you can probably make up most of that with a couple Transcendent Blessings, and then if somebody's using Divinity, right? So 5 players with swords, 1 Divinity, Transcendent Blessings, you're probably good to go. Anyway, that's my thought on that. We'll have to see. I want to get in there with a team and try it just out of curiosity, because it's sort of a good metric overall for what that sword change is actually going to mean. So we'll be keeping an eye on it, that's for sure. Exotic changes and bug fixes. They're fixing that issue where if you took out your ghost shell, it would erase the buff on the weapon. So they're fixing that for Ace of Spades, Terabon, Hawkmoon, which is great. This one I'm curious about. Borealis and Hardlight now have a custom, quite short animation for switching damage types. So I guess they're making it so that it's not a reload animation when you're switching. It's going to be something short, which highly approve, by the way. Excited to see that. Duality is getting an increased damage fall-off distance by 1.25 meters, and that's hipfire and ADS. That is interesting. And then the maximum buff stacks will be 5 instead of 7, but each stack will have more of a bonus, and they extended the buff duration slightly, so it'll be easier to get it up to max stacks. Each stack will be worth more, and it will last longer. I think that is a good change, because I like Duality, but I always did feel like it needed a little more, so that's good. I just didn't really know what was wrong, but them explaining that, that makes sense to me, that would help solve the problem. Sturm will once again reload any equipped special slot weapon on kill, provided the special weapons clip isn't full already, and there's available reserve ammo. Good news. And then they're fixing the issue that was preventing Merciless from increasing its charge rate on non-lethal hits. I did notice that, by the way. So, that's cool. I mean, not that anybody's really using Merciless, but some of these changes that are coming, who knows? Besides, it's a cool weapon, right? It's fun to trot it out, so it's nice to hear that it's going to work right. And then the last note is they are planning to take a tuning pass on Arbalist. It won't be ready in time for February 9th, but they are expecting to have it touched later in Season 13. What we were all talking about is that I think what Arbalist needs is to have its aim assist killed off quite a bit. Like some of the more powerful precision weapons. Its damage levels and stuff are fine. Maybe its damage against other Guardians should be touched. But that's what I say. The aim assist and damage to Guardians are what need to be touched. I really hope they don't do anything outside of that. And I mean, even its charge time could be touched, to be honest. Because if they make that weapon less sticky, I don't care. I don't need it to be sticky. That's fine. Let's see. Crimson Days. Got some bad news about Crimson Days, everybody. And while I'm no Crucible person, I have always really enjoyed Crimson Doubles, especially pairing up with one of my clanmates and going through that. And unfortunately, Bungie feels that it has really been missing the mark over the last few years, which I agree with. And so they've made the decision to discontinue Crimson Days moving forward. The goal being that it'll allow them to maintain focus for other seasonal offerings, quests and activities and a lot of other stuff. And people want to know, well, what's the fate of Crimson Doubles, right? The Crimson Days playlist. The mode is currently being shifted to the Destiny content vault, but may return in the future. And I don't know, I know that Crimson Days has definitely fallen short in terms of what am I actually supposed to do? What are the rewards? But I don't know if I think that it needed to leave the game entirely. I mean, we could still, decorate the tower for Valentine's Day and turn on Crimson Doubles and go for it and, like, have an emblem and a ghost or something. Like, I don't know. Did it need to be more than that? I understand what they're saying. But I just don't know that I like that activity completely disappearing. It's a shame, But I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out. I mean, that's it. They've made the decision, folks. So for now, rest in peace, Crimson Days. You will be missed. And by the way, now that Crimson Days hoodie that I have, my Vow hoodie, is a lot more special than it already was to me because that event, for now, is dead and gone. Also, folks, do not forget that Crucible tokens will be going away at the end of this season, so you need to turn them in before February 9th, or they're just going to go bye-bye. And that goes for your Crucible token gift packages as well. Okay? Also, don't forget that the current Stasis Fragment quests will be deprecated at the end of the season. Players are advised to turn in all Crucible tokens and Crucible token gifts and finish all available Stasis Fragment quests before Season 13 starts. I'm not going to go over the known issues because nothing is that big of a deal. So let's move into some of my own notes here. Dungeons. So a couple weekends ago, my clan and I just decided, man, we love the dungeons. Let's sit down and do all 3 in one night. And we were having such a good time, and we were talking about how the dungeons are going to be the source of the new rules for the reissued weapons, right? For those moon weapons that are getting reissued, Dreaming City weapons getting reissued, that's going to be the source. We have to do all the dungeons. And I was thinking, like, we should have unique weapons and armor from the dungeons. Prophecy started this, but that was not... The Moonfang set was not created for the Prophecy dungeons specifically. It was actually an Eververse set that they decided to make the rewards that come out of there. And so, seeing how well that worked, right, and how fun it was to go and do that activity and get the specific armor, all of the dungeons should have their own unique weapons and armor, just like a raid does. And I think they should have their own special mods, too. Or at least let us use raid mods in the dungeons. So, for example, we should be able to use Taken Barrier and Shattered Throne in Prophecy. We should be able to use Hive Barrier in the Pit of Heresy. Right? And also, they should have a hard mode, like what I proposed for raids, right? Contest mode that puts you -20 on power. Maybe some other modifiers, too. And give us cool rewards to go with. Maybe it's just an emblem, right? Just a certain emblem. Or maybe it's a certain shader. Something to show the accomplishment that we can show off when we're in orbit with a group walking around the tower. Something that people can see. Heck, why don't you give us the aura back? Why don't they give us auras for doing a dungeon in hard mode? I'm just saying. I cleared the Harbinger mission solo last weekend, and I'm really proud of the accomplishment because I figured it out for myself. I didn't watch any videos or anything like I did with Whisper and 0 Hour. I learned it myself, and I overcame, and it was a really awesome feeling to pull it off after doing that. I really, really like that we weren't beating a timer on this Harbinger mission, but rather we had a couple really tough wipe zones, right? The Reservoir Survive encounter and the boss encounter that we had to get through. I much, much prefer this structure to what we had in Whisper and 0 Hour because that timer is arbitrary and you have to rush, and you can't really enjoy it. And, I mean, it was so much fun figuring out how and when things were spawning and learning what I could do to control the pace of the encounters by controlling those spawns. I mean, if you want to know how I did it, that was exactly it. It's a good challenge. that really is not bad with the right loadout and some patience and a little bit of strategy. I do have a video up on the channel of my successful run if you want to check it out. It was only my second attempt at solo, and it was only just my 5th time through total. I had done like 3 runs with my clanmates, helping them roll some Hawk Moons. So another thing that I've really liked while we're on the topic of Harbinger is that now that we're on week 2 of having that mission available, if you notice, the route that you take is different. The way things spawn in the Reservoir Survive encounter are different, and the final boss was also different. This week's final boss was the shielded captain that you have to kill the glowing enemies and then throw the orbs at him to take a shield down. I thought that was amazing. I mean, this is awesome. We got variety, something new to adapt to. It was a really great idea from Bungie to do that. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is such a great evolution from what we had with Whisper and 0 Hour. It's so much better than just challenging us with an arbitrary timer. Right? We have traversal challenges, we have enemy challenges, but we can also explore, like we've got the feather collecting, we've got collecting, that currency to get our ship. All of these things are so many cool things. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how many variants there are of this mission, because I don't know what you could do besides the 2 routes that we've done already. But maybe it's just different combinations of the 2 things that we've seen so far. I don't know if there's going to be other bosses. I don't know what else you could do after the ones we've already had. But I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. And if it's something different yet again, I will definitely make a video so that you guys can see what's different. I also picked up the Flawless completion, not solo flawless, but just flawless for this a few days ago. And I was thinking they need to award emblems and or shaders for flawless and solo flawless for each of the different ones. And things like the Prophecy, Ghost, and Sparrow, right? Which are for solo and flawless respectively. I'm disappointed that I have nothing to show off for completing solo and flawless Harbinger. It's really a shame. Especially solo. And look, even solo flawless, I'm going to defend that community right now. I haven't joined those ranks yet, but I'm thinking of trying. I feel bad that the people that have done the solo flawless have nothing to show off except they can see in their triumphs that they got it. You know what I mean? At least those guys should have an emblem or something. I don't know. So that's a place where we're lacking just a little bit. And I realize that you need design team to do it. But here's what I say, okay? Remember how we had the strike emblems, right? And let's use Savathun's song as an example, right? And there were the 3 different emblems, right? There's 3 of them, or is it 4? And you could unlock the different ones for, I don't know, completing it so many times or whatever it is that would unlock the next one. And why couldn't we do that? Because design-wise, it would cut down on the effort. The base emblem background would be the same. And then we could just have different symbols for which one that you did, and you could, toggle which one you wanted, or I don't know, maybe that toggling system can't exist anymore because of how we changed it. But okay, so there's 3 emblems in there, right? And the only thing that's different is the little sub symbol. And one of them is for solo, and one of them's for flawless, and one of them's for solo flawless. And that lets you show it off because people see, oh, hey, that's the Harbinger emblem, but oh, look, that one's different. What did that guy do to get that one? Oh, that's solo flawless. That's awesome. We need to have those kind of things. It can't be just a triumph that's in the book. It can't be. And I'll say the same thing about Prophecy. Prophecy should have an emblem for completing it. And then it should have different sub-symbols on it for which thing you did. Was it flawless? Was it solo flawless? You know what I mean? It's a major bummer that the only emblem for Prophecy is for solo flawless. I'm just saying. Another thought that I had. We were thinking about the menagerie being gone, my clan and we were reminiscing about the Black Armory and how much we actually did like it. And this idea popped into my brain, and I'm just going to say it right now. Black Armory should return as a menagerie type activity. Boom. I just said it. And what would that look like? Well, I think actually that would be a super healthy thing for Black Armory, because 6 players. Can you imagine one of the encounters? Imagine this. Would be 6 people playing friggin' Black Armory ball, right? And the difficulty could be appropriate for the 6 people, right? And maybe there's things maybe again, it's not just a timer. Maybe there's things you have to do to get to the point where you have balls that spawn so you can throw them in. There's so many possibilities, right? And then you could have other different types of encounters, so that, like, maybe that forging thing is the final encounter or something, right? But then you could have, like, other bosses and different things along the way to get to the point where you could forge, right? Wouldn't that be neat? That would be such a triumphant way for those weapons to return, because I'm going to tell you right now, there's one weapon that in my brain I keep feeling sad about that it's sunset, and that was my perfectly god-rolled blast furnace. I miss that gun. I miss it. Because it is still, to this day, fabulous. I will trot that thing out in strikes just because I miss it and I want to play with it. So, Black Armory. Bring it back as a menagerie type 6-player activity, Bungie. It could be the most epic thing of all time. And I said it right here. When are we going to be getting a Vidoc about the music of Destiny? Like, seriously, it is some of the most incredible music ever written. And I know you guys are all out there going crazy over the Deepstone Lullaby, right? And that's one of my favorites. Like, Last Array, the Beyond Light theme, and the Deepstone Lullaby. Those are just some examples of the absolutely incredible music that's in Destiny. And I would love to have a Vidoc or a series of Vidocs about the music. Please, Bungie, give us those. I think I am definitely not alone in wanting to see more about the music. Last but not least, I am happy to report that I can confirm the new shelter glitch for the Deepstone Crypt does in fact work. And there are 2 different ways to do it. It's super easy. You can check out my video on how to do it right here on the channel. And I'm going to put links to the videos I mentioned, both the shelter glitch and the second week Harbinger. I'll put all those links in the description. Okay, guys. That's going to do it for this edition of Tower Talk. Until next time, stay safe out there. Be excellent to each other. And I will see you Starside.